be with you all for sure. Would love to just, if you're first time here, we just finally set up a little promo that's going to go out to the community about coming on these calls a little bit more to bolster it up and get more of you on here. That should start hopefully next week at some point. Well, not hopefully, it's starting next week. Thanks, Sally. I never know. Like these first 5 minutes where Elon and I are just doing, it's like we're coming off calls. We're trying to ground into this call. I'm always watching Elon do something that makes my insides churn a little bit, and then I got to ground myself. But he feels perfectly justified. He's got nothing about it.
I think you make way too big of a deal about it.
Honestly, I don't really care, but I can feel the communities care. And so it's just like when I was little and, Dad would be doing.
Well, let's put it out to the community. Do you care?
that Elon's true. I would say 9 out of 10 don't, but there's that one out of 10. That 1 out of the 10. That's like, I can't watch these two.
It's the same person though that complains that we curse too much.
That's probably true. Having said that, it always feels like, did we just miss out on transforming that person's life because Elon was eating a bar?
To which I say,
it is what it is, and it ain't what it ain't.
Good luck to you, sir or madam.
Okay, well, life. I'm going to let it go, and I think what we're going to turn Tuesday Tune-Ups is it's going to be like somebody feed Phil on Netflix. We're going to bring in a meal from somewhere different on the planet every month, and we're just going to sit here and watch Elon eat it and just let all our parts just turn up, just like, oh, God, I hate how he eats those peanuts, and just like really, really, really feel it deeply.
Then you know what we should do? I should get like a falafel, like where I get like really messy and there's like sauce dripping down. Oh. Now that I have a beard, I can like, it'll be like here.
Let it dry, like an old egg.
Yeah.
It's just in the beard.
I think that's where we really push the edges of what's possible for people.
Imagine like that's the new methodology that we've discovered. It's like people are so turned off by like liquid food in the beard. Like they just can't look at it, and we're like, and that's step one of your healing.
Look the at awareness the effect. That's it right there, baby.
Yeah, look at it.
That's funny.
Yeah. Anyway, so we're experimenting with new methodologies, as you guys can see. Well, that's it. Now you turn yourself off. This is the moment.
No.
Anyway, hi everybody. It's nice to be with you all, with the community, and for those of you guys who watch this replay later, thanks for letting us waste 5 minutes of your life.
I don't know. I think laughter is the best medicine, so they say.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, look, this is taking off in the chat. There are people who actually want to vote on what they're going to watch you eat. I mean, there's entire TV shows of very famous people that do this for a living, and I can really see you being one of them. That's all.
Listen, I eat very cleanly most of the time. Not falafel. Falafel is not clean.
No,
but most of the other stuff is clean.
That's fun. Is there anything top of mind for you that you want to jump into?
Well, now all I'm thinking about is food and chewing.
I mean, so talk about how their journey with food has transformed your life then.
By the way, we saw that episode of Dubai with Phil.
Oh, yeah.
And it got us all really excited to go to Dubai.
I know. What a moving experience, right?
We already booked the brothers restaurant and the mother-daughter restaurant.
Before I go to any city, I see if he's been to that city and I watch a show. I landed in so many amazing places in Portugal because I watch that show.
I didn't realize it was on for so many seasons.
Very many. And he's quirky, but kind of enjoyable in a funny way. He's got a real skill with connecting with people.
He just owns his weirdness. Like he has nothing about it.
Yeah. For those of you guys who are missing context, there's a show on Netflix called Somebody Feed Phil. And the guy who's the main star of the show was actually either the writer or the producer of Everybody Loves Raymond. And so he's really well known, especially in the comedic Hollywood thing. And so it's a food travel show essentially. But he's like this really quirky, dare I say, nerdy kind of guy. But he's just like owns his weird so well.
So well.
And he has a gift to connect with people because he always has this bright smile on his face. Yes, somebody feed Phil is the name of the show. And it's just fun. You know, they explore really beautiful, eccentric places in the world. I recently watched the episode with Kyoto, and I'm like,
it's going to be our next one because that's where Leo wants to go now.
Yeah, I'm like, take me to Kyoto. And there's this beautiful thing about Kyoto, he says, where he's like, there's a poet that once wrote a poem about it. He goes, even when I'm in Kyoto, I miss Kyoto.
Ha!
I love that. What a phenomenal line. And when you watch the show, like you feel that longing of like a place that resources you this way. So it's really worthwhile if you get into it, if you can get past the quirkiness, because initially I was a little bit judgmental of it, and then I started really enjoying the show.
You really like I don't know. I enjoy him.
Yeah, no, I do.
Yeah, but it's honestly, I was whatever about Dubai. I was kind of like, okay, you know, it's going to be this like big city, crazy, over the top, blah 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 blah. But like, I didn't realize that it had that like the old city, which is 60 years old. I didn't realize that was there, and like, I got so much more excited. It reminded me so much of Israel, by the way. Like
Middle East.
It looks like it just looks like Jerusalem.
Middle East is Middle East, you know. I don't know, however you slice it.
Yeah. I will tell you, and maybe this is an experience that many people I know that I've spoken to of late are having, but there's just been a lot of like rage and frustration and like wanting to rip people's heads off inside my system of late.
Tell me more.
And yesterday I had like a full-on blowout.
With a stranger or with a family member?
With a stranger. I mean, yeah, with a stranger. Not like a stranger, but there's work that was supposed to be done on our house like months and months and months ago, and we've been just getting this weird run around because we've been nice, you know, and we're like, it's like, what do they say? That squeaky wheel gets the grease or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
So like neither Fanny or I are not squeaky. And so we just kind of like let it go and let it go and let it go and let it go. And so yesterday, after months and months and months of them finally telling us all this bullshit about how they didn't have the parts and all this nonsense. Meanwhile, like simple things like screens on our windows, we've been in this house for almost 2 years, don't have. Meanwhile, they're building new homes in other communities, same models like ours. They all have screens. I'm like, then don't fucking put it on that one and bring it here. No one's living there. Bring it here.
Yeah.
So anyway, yesterday was the date. So all this magical stuff was supposed to happen someday, right? They're supposed to be here at between 9 to 11. 12 o'clock rolls around. 1 o'clock, no communication, no nothing. They don't show up. And at this point, I'm like, yeah, this is just kind of how it goes. So I call the company. Sure enough, they got stuck in some other job, blah, blah, blah. They don't show up here till like 2:30. The first thing they're going to do is, he's like, we're not going to have time to do everything. We'll do as much as we can, blah, 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 blah. They go to the back. They need to replace our cabana door. Now, mind you, we're in a community that has this model home, let's say at least 200 to 300 times. And then in other communities, the same model home, at least another few hundred times. Like, this is a well-known model. They bring the door to the back and the hinges on the door are on the wrong side.
Okay.
And I'm like, how do you possibly order a door after months we're waiting that's on the wrong side? So I'm like, okay. So now I see them bring the old door back, put it back on, blah, 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 blah. All this takes about 20 minutes. So now it's, let's say 3 o'clock. For the next hour, instead of putting up screens, instead of like starting anything else, they literally sat behind the truck right in front of my window and were fucking dicking around on their phones. And I lost my coconuts. I was fuming. I was so mad. I was like, how the fuck do you like operate this way? So anyway, I lost my marbles in an email nonetheless. And then people were like, Fanny was like, that's uncalled for, blah, 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 blah. Even the guy that was like one of the main directors, he's like, if you ever, if you send an email like this one more time, we'll start responding to you. And I was like, here's the irony, man.
You haven't responded.
The only time that you respond is when I say this. Yeah. When I ask, hey, can you send me an update? I don't hear from you. Then I'm like, hey, follow up. So anyway, I lost my shit. And then this morning I went to play tennis. And as I'm riding to tennis, like I ride my bike to the courts, I can feel my body is just so tired.
Yeah.
And my body's like, dude, I need a break. Like you need, and my thought is like, okay, I need to just take a week off from like doing physical stuff. I show up to the court. I tell my buddy, I'm like, man, like I think I need to take a break. Less than 10 minutes into us hitting, my knee starts hurting.
Yeah.
And I can't play.
I'm
like, okay. That's that.
Yeah.
So now on top of that, like I'm angry and frustrated that my knee is hurting. But
you know what they say, when you say I can't stand it,
yeah,
the knees start hurting.
Yeah. So
I hear you. So what now?
It's been so anyway, I had a mini actually just before we got on here. And I told the person that I was with, I was like, listen, I just wanted to let you know I have a lot of rage running through my system.
Mm-hmm.
And he, we just have such a good rapport. And he's like, there's love for that here too. He's like, I'm happy to hold that for you. And so I sat and I've had this urge to scream, this like visceral, like I actually wanted to do it on the tennis court earlier today. Like that's how I was like, I wanted to let it all out.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I'll come home and I'll like scream into a pillow, and I didn't. So when we sat, I just, sometimes like it's not the sound that needs to come out. It's the energy that needs to move.
Yeah.
And so I did a few of those, like,
yeah. Like what does the body want to do?
Like just move it out, and I knew that he could hold it. And I did like maybe 3 or 4 of those. And then I had this magical, like, it just felt like something cracked open and all this like energy and bliss just started like pouring in.
Mm.
And afterwards he was like, so how did it feel to feel that rage? And I told him the story of what I went through. And he was like, it feels so good to support you and like feel that coming from you.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I think that's just what we need. We don't have an outlet to release. And then what I notice is when you're in a rage, frustration, upset, everything in life, every person, every circumstance, everything shows up to match you and give you outlet for rage. It's like this shows up, okay, be upset. This shows up, be upset. It keeps building and building and building till you do something to shift out of that energy. So yeah, it feels really good. And then even when we were with the coaches earlier, I was sitting outside because they were doing work in my office, and I could feel because I basically was like, I'm not gonna play tennis for the next week to really like let my body recover. And I could feel even as I was sitting outside, my body was like releasing and was just so happy. It was like, thank you. And I could just feel like little pieces just kind of relaxing and coming off. It's interesting. Like, I know my body so well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one thing about knowing, and then the other one to take action and actually listen.
Sure.
And I think part of it is like, I love tennis. I love that activity. I love starting my mornings that way. So it's like really, really hard to give it up.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just recognizing that I really need to tune in more. And on the weeks that I just don't have it, or it doesn't feel like, to at least take 2 days, 3 days, whatever it is, but like to actually honor that my body needs more recovery and more rest. It's kind of like what I've been tuning into even just today.
Was it distance makes the heart grow fonder? You know, if you give your body the rest and come back, you'll enjoy the game even more.
You know, it's like that line I heard about Kyoto one time where
even when you're playing tennis,
even while I'm playing tennis, I miss tennis.
Yeah, it's a really good line. You know, like, talk about how you know you really love something. Yeah, because that's how I felt about San Diego when I first got here too, or like a loved one, right? So even when I'm with you, I'm afraid I'm going to miss you.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So I think that's beautiful and way to listen to. No, my microphone is flaccid. For those who are asking,
it needs a little Viagra.
I have a thing here that is supposed to tighten it.
It needs more Viagra.
But the microphone is still falling down on me, and it's a very heavy microphone. So at this point, I need to support it with both hands. You guys let your minds wander with whatever is about to happen for you. But there was no joke there.
That was not a sexual innuendo.
Not at all, no. So back at the conversation ahead, I have found this to be a really useful skill. I discovered this a few years ago that just need to be doing stand-up routines, I'm telling you. But I found this a few years ago, maybe last year actually. It was like, the question is, when you're upset, when you're freaking out, when you're angry, when you're whatever you are, even when you're in a loving state, it's like, what does the body actually want to do? By the way, screaming in the car is a great place to do it.
Yes.
I find the more public with the more windows open, the better.
Really, really scare the common folk.
Yeah. And you do it by the handicap parking. That's the best place. The energy is just right over there. No, but like in the car, into a pillow, like a good rage scream goes a long way for releasing energy in the body. Also just shaking, nailing something, especially if like that fire is in there. It's like, if it doesn't have an outlet, it just gets stuck in the system. It just starts eating away at the body. Not surprised that you have pain coming. It's like fire, inflammation. You're increasing the heat of the body. You're inflaming the body. It all makes a lot of perfect sense to me. So yeah, I mean, a few years ago, I won't share the whole story because there's some element here of really intense stuff and some element of really private stuff. But I sat with my teacher, and I remember I was in a really anxious place, and he was like, "Can you show me what that looks like?" And I was actually afraid to show him what it looked like, and I'm not going to do it now. I've done it in front of many of our other clients, though. But it looked a little bit like being someone who's addicted to meth. It was like this like visceral shaking and like my eyes twitching, and like that's actually what the anxiety felt like in my body. And I had never even considered to let it express that way before, up until that moment. And there was something, and I have a lot of trust with this individual, so this thing that felt very embarrassing to do in front of him, I did it. And there was like a real element of freedom about that, and also a real following the intelligence of the body about that. And since then, when I've hit moments like Elon just said, I've had moments where I'm like, fuck, what does the body want to do? And this sounds terrible, but again, body, not mind, because the mind is embarrassed about doing these kind of things. It doesn't want to scream. It doesn't want to twitch and shake and look really crazy and all this kind of stuff. But like I had this moment where I was like, our peer group, something had happened, and a person that I love very much decided to exit our friend group in a really ugly way. And I love this person deeply. And the amount of anger that came up about that in my system about how they were doing it was super intense. And it wasn't even directed at me. But I have this thing, like I mentioned, where like Elon's eating. I don't mind that Elon's eating. Like, I don't mind if Elon has a Kentucky Fried Chicken leg sticking out of his mouth. I really don't care. Or like, if you're doing it, I don't care. Like, it doesn't actually irk me, but it irks me that it irks other people. Like, my system is always like scanning like the room and like how everybody feels. I'm like, are they okay? Are they okay? Is everyone okay? Everyone okay? It's stabilized. We're okay. But in this case, like, I remember I was laying in bed and I couldn't sleep. Now the picture here is my wife's in bed with me, my baby's in bed with me, and I have this like freaking rage in my system, and I'm not sleeping, so I'm annoyed on top of that I'm letting this situation get to me. And I remember I asked my body, I'm like, what do you need? And the body's like, I want to choke something. Whoa. And I was like, this was a dark place in my system, right? Like, it like wanted to remove life, basically. That's what it felt like.
Wow.
And I was like, whoa, okay. And I'm like, well, how do we do that in a safe way? And my body just reached back at the pillow and grabbed the pillow, and I just stuck it here. Hopefully my microphone doesn't fall. And I just start like literally like taking the life out of this pillow, right? Which seems like an act of a crazy person. And it is, because I am. But like the amount of resonant relief that I got from doing that, I cannot even begin to express like what that did for my body. And I was like, whoa, this is so crazy. Because it's like, look, at the end of the day, yeah, we have this big, beautiful brain, and it's allowed us to accomplish ridiculous amounts of stuff on this planet, right? For good or for bad. But like, the animal exists. And the animal is intuitive. And the animal listens to what's going on right now. If it's time for the animal to migrate, the animal migrates. If it's time for the animal to eat, the animal eats. If it's time for the animal to procreate, the animal procreates. And it allows itself to be unencumbered, and certainly doesn't consider how it looks to the rest of the tribe while it's doing it, right? It has a need, the need gets met, and so on and so forth. And it expects the need to be able to be met. Humans, we override this kind of stuff all the time. And then it spits out of us in really ugly ways in society, in politics, and all these other areas of life, where it really does do damage because we're unable to process what's going on in our animalistic body. And I found that to be just a phenomenal tool. It's like, you want to do some therapy on yourself, just anytime you're upset, just ask yourself, what does my body want to do? But this can also translate to extremely positive interactions as well. It's like, walk into a supermarket, and instead of having a list of the food that you normally buy, ask your body, what do you want to eat? And you will see, if you do this seasonally, your body will change. You will naturally want sweeter things as you go from fall into winter, and a lot of certain fruits bear fruit at that time for that specific reason, because we need the sugar to store fat, because our body believes it's going into a hibernation kind of phase during winter.
Yep.
And so on and so forth, right? There's all these things. And if you really ask yourself, instead of just eating the food that you're told is healthy, I think you'd be shocked at what it is that your body wants. And suddenly it, combines foods that you would never combine. I don't remember, I think it was an L3 session last week. I don't know why, but like maybe once, twice a year, I have an insane craving for cottage cheese.
Huh.
I mean, it's like I can't get it off my mind.
Wow.
And it's been going on for like 4 or 5 years now. And I have never tracked at what parts of the year this happens. But like, if you put a tub in front of me, I would dunk my head into it and just fucking go to town. It's what? It's like I can't, like, it's like a drug addict. Like, until I have it, I can't settle down.
Wow.
And this will happen maybe once or twice a year. I'll go and buy like a bunch of cottage cheese, put some sunflowers on there, a little salt. That tub won't last a day.
That's a strange craving.
Very strange craving, like a pregnant man, and then like, that's it. And like, for the rest of the year, I don't even think about cottage cheese. If I see it on the aisle, I don't even notice it. Like, no craving whatsoever. But this has been going on now for like 3 or 4 years. And Mandy knows, I'm like, it's cottage cheese time. Like, you go to the store and you get the healthiest cottage cheese that I'm allowed to eat in this house, So I don't know, that just happens. But then we've had a new teacher recently in our lives the last 3-4 months, and in this field of energy that Elon and I are working with, there's a lot of shamans that we work with, like all intelligences from other fields, so to speak. And one of the things that this teacher told me, they're like, you're going to start eating some weird stuff. Like there's going to be some cravings of like foods that you haven't put together before. And I suddenly noticed I started like stacking all these like weird food things kind of intuitively that I haven't been doing in the past before. And it's been great. Like, I don't know, like out of all the years in the last like 5 years, especially with kids, I'm working out less than I would like to, but somehow like I've gotten leaner in this period of time, like really effortlessly. And it's like really, we can be either creatures of habit or we can be creatures of the present rather.
Yeah.
Creatures of habit or creatures of the present. And when you're in the present and you really ask your system, like, what do you need? You might be surprised at what it responds. Maybe I want something crunchy today, or maybe I want something cool today. And it's like, I would really, really trust that. And, whether you know it or not, we can smell pheromones. Everything is impacting us energetically. And your body is a constant guidance system. And clearly, we all come from different lineages that ate very specific foods at very specific times of the year. And so your DNA carries those lineages with you. And it doesn't matter where you are on planet Earth, your body may have very, very different needs. I'm going to give a shout out to a company here. They didn't pay me for this. There's a company called Viome, Viome. I don't know if they're in your country, but they're here in the States. And you can do blood samples, mouth swab, and stool samples with them for just a thorough check on foods that you should be avoiding. Right, the what's it called? The not genetic, the bacterial makeup of your microbiome and stuff like that. And it's really cool because we're starting to get into a place of customized medicine in our society. And I'm from AI and quantum computing, the thing I'm probably most excited about is the democratization of healthcare and the customization of protocols that we should all be getting, right? Because there is clearly no one size fits all answer for everybody when it comes to medicine, for food or exercise, which is why any specific diet will work for a subset of people and then not work for those other people at all. Elon and I do really, really good not eating vegetables at all. Great. In fact, if I stick to a meat only diet, healthiest I'll ever feel in my entire life. And here and there,
it's not for everybody.
And it's not for everybody. And there's people that might feel terrible like that. I saw Marcy, for example, just posted about that today. She used to eat salads all the time because that's what healthcare people tell you to do. And now you'll see so many people in the healthcare industry or influencers, everybody's moved away from like just munching on vegetables all day long because of the discovery of oxalates and certain enzymatic literally poisons inside of these vegetables that actually harm your system, bloat you, and make it very difficult for you to digest food, which is very ironic from how we all thought about fiber just 10 years ago. So again, it keeps telling us that we don't really know what's going on with our body. But what's cool about Viome, and the reason I share it, is because after, and it's really their business model, is the supplements that you get thereafter, because the testing itself is actually really inexpensive, all things considered, and how much the stuff used to cost to run these kind of tests. I mean, a test with stool, blood, and swab, I mean, that used to be like $5,000 to $10,000, right? Like now it's like a few $100 to get these kind of tests. But Mandy did it, and she did the full lot of tests. And I was like, this is kind of bullshit, blah, 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 until I saw her output and what they recommended for her in terms of her supplementation and how minusculely varied the considerations were in terms of what she got and what I got in terms of the supplementation. So, all I just
what do you mean when you say minusculely varied?
I mean, so they will custom build a multivitamin for you.
Okay.
In these packets for 30 days, and also pre and probiotic mixture that's based on specifically what your microbiome was showing. And so they'll tell you, hey, avoid these foods for like the next 30 days. Some foods will be like avoided for 6 months. And some of these foods are very healthy foods that you and I would be eating on a regular basis. I mean, like blueberries. You never think this is going to harm me, but none of us are really aware of like, okay, that's causing a lot of sulfuric acid in the body, or whatever it is that is overshooting that's actually creating a negative thing. Because again, things out of moderation tend to mess up your body.
Always.
And so, at the end, they recommend a palette of these pills, and they show you what's in the pills and at what micrograms of every one of those things. And oh my God, it's like you'd expect two different people, two completely different outputs. I just thought it was like, kind of varied. I mean, even if it had the same thing in there, the variation in how much she was going to get versus how much I was going to get was like night and day.
Oh, when you said minuscule, I thought you meant like the vitamins were the same, but what you're saying is they're like polar opposite.
Totally different. I mean, like totally different based on our testing. And then same thing with the pre and probiotics. I mean, like totally different mixtures recommended. And it's like somewhere between $170 or $199 a month for the pills and the pre and probiotics. And I can't tell you that I was like saved by having that experience. Like I wasn't like, oh my God, everything's better now, because supplementation rarely, if ever, makes you feel a lot better unless you really are in a sort of condition chronically and it pulls you out of it. Then you obviously absolutely know that protocol worked for you. But when you're generally healthy and you don't have a lot of body aches and pains and you have mental clarity, there's not a lot of feedback that you can get on that front. So yeah, I just wanted to put that out there because like there are really wonderful tools coming out all the time to benefit our well care. And I'm a strong believer for everybody here, right? Like we work with you guys on energy and awareness, but it's the wrong word, housed in this body temple, having its experience. And, if you're in a constant state of pain, can that be a great teacher? Absolutely. But, like getting initiated in the mastery of the body, getting initiated in the mastery of the mind, getting initiated in the mastery of awareness, these are all extremely different fields of study. And nonetheless, they all impact the quality of our lives significantly. And so I just wanted to put that out there as, if you are doing the energetic work, but you are consistently in pain in some way, there are fantastic things you could be doing out there to alleviate that. And I just want to tell you from the people I value and trust their opinions so much and have done incredible somatic work with me, the philosophy of one of the wisest ones I've ever met has told me, and I now have adopted this philosophy because I think it's a smart way of looking at things. It's like that pain is a total normal part of life, like physical pain, but chronic pain has been normalized and is not a normal part of life. No one should be experiencing chronic pain. If you're in chronic pain, there is some sort of misalignment and you need an adjustment of some kind in your body, whether that's food-based or something somatically shifting in your body or draining something from the body. And there are amazing practitioners out there that have this knowledge and can help you with that. And what that can do and parlay to your spiritual practices is incredible.
Yeah.
Right. And there are certain precepts when you go study Buddhism of ways that they eat or don't eat, things that you're allowed to say and don't say for those exact reasons, because they're always thinking about how do we create a foundation where doing the practice is going to elicit the best response. And so, if you're on this path to well care in terms of your well-being internally, I would say it equally needs your focus to be focused on the external as well. I mean, in terms of your physicality, and not in terms of circumstances.
I mean, one of the things that Guy and I figured out early on was, the work, when you get into the more advanced practices of the work that we do, is you begin to run some really big charge through your body. And if you don't have a strong enough physical container, that charge is just going to short circuit you. And so for us specifically, also as practitioners and people who run this charge in order to transmit this to community and others, et cetera, it's like we're running this constant charge, which is both healing and taxing on the body at the same time. And so if your body is not strong, you're going to feel all sorts of other things. And that's the part that I think so many people miss. It's like, I think we all want at some level to experience peace, like inner peace and vitality. And you cannot experience inner peace or vitality if your physical body is in dis-ease. Like, it is impossible. For those of you that have done this work for a long time, and I know we've had these conversations, like, when there's a physical pain in your body, whether from sickness or you hurt yourself in some way, shape, or form, how much harder is it to stay, open in your awareness and spacious and grounded and all that stuff? It's way harder because there's a physical thing. It's like, when you have a headache, can you focus on anything else other than the headache? Or when you stub your toe, can you focus on anything other than your toe? Like, it's impossible. Maybe not impossible. It's very, very difficult. And so think about this. If your body is in chronic pain or some sort of instability, it's constantly fighting. And so you're losing life force in just managing the pain and just managing, like, living with this chronic thing. And what happens, our body is incredibly adaptable. And so it adapts to being with that pain. And then you just get used to it. So it's like, I just get chronic headaches, or I have chronic stomach issues, or I have, tension in my back, or this or that. And people just kind of succumb to, this is the way life is. And your body figures out ways to compensate,
cope, yeah,
so that you can move through life. Like, it is incredibly adaptable. And you got to realize that takes so much life force and energy that you could be using to create more energetic healing, more inner peace, more intuition, more wisdom, more guidance, more love, more fulfillment, more connection. Like, all of that stuff is being robbed if you're not taking care of that. And I think what's going to end up happening in the next, my guess is 2 to maximum 5 years, the incredible amount of information that is going to come out on personalized gut care. Mark my words, like, every supplement and vitamin that everyone will take on the planet in the next maximum 5 years will be some form of healing your gut and, like, stabilizing your individual gut biome. Because if you can do that, 90+% of the ailments that most people have will just simply disappear. And so there's going to be a big push. I actually saw there's going to be a cool Netflix documentary, at least the thing looks cool, that's coming out at the end of this month, all about gut. So it's going to be something that is going to be talked about over and over and over and over the next few years. And it's time. I'm glad that it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely had its moment. Like dopamine, serotonin, it's all gut based, right? So your joy parameters, when you're, like, really struggling with that, it's usually gut imbalance. Yeah, I mean, we've been focusing on that for a really, really long time, and I've definitely seen improvements in those areas of my life for sure. And I couldn't agree more. I don't know if 5 years is going to be that revolution, but with the speed that AI is working at right now, year over year, we're going to see, I think, exponential data democratization in terms of what's accessible. Yeah, I don't know how many of you guys are, using AI or scared of AI, but, like, the uses we keep finding for it, and the way it helps us navigate stuff and the time it's saving. Like, my wife is really, really into gardening. We have a big, beautiful backyard right now. We have a ton of space, and, like, man, gardening is an art, right? For those of you guys who care enough to know enough about it, and, like, what plants go together and what kind of nutrients they need. And, like, to be able to ask this thing how to organize things, what's the profiles? How do we help the soil regenerate? I mean, this is stuff that used to take hours out of your time to organize and figure out and put together with another piece of information to make sure it's all right, and to ask, like, one question and be able to, like, have this answer in front of you. Like, I've been just chatting with it about stuff, and it's a really wonderful way to even organize your own thoughts about things and get some feedback. And it's a really useful, if not scary, tool. But it's coming this way or that way, so we might as well learn to make it useful and not so scary. and influence in our own ways. But if you're not using it, it's a really wonderful tool. I will say this, have a caveat when it comes to healthcare, because clearly all that information is coming from extremely conventional medical means, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But obviously, for those of you guys who are more holistically motivated and are just looking for well care and not emergency care, then oftentimes that lens can lead you down a pretty shitty path. So look into holistics and NDs and functional doctors and somatic healers, and those people are just wealths of information on how to balance the body, because healthcare is not about specializing and healing one specific thing. It's about creating balance in the body, right? Like you can't pinpoint something in the mind and say, I'm going to just heal that thing. It's just, let's balance the way that it operates.
Yeah.
Let's balance our energy. And that's why we teach the way that we teach, because we feel it's a holistic way of just living inside of like operationally having a holistic way of viewing your own healing process, instead of like, I don't like my relationship with my mother, let's fix that, and like specializing on fixing your relationship with your mom, which is may or may not be time for. Right. So yeah, that's what I got for today. Anything else you wanted to bring through? There was a question in here from Dragos. It was a little bit off the path, but maybe we can bring it back onto the path.
Okay.
Let's see. I will just broadcast it to the room so everyone can see. So what's your thought on having this shiny object? Yeah, I'm not sure what that word is. Following, I imagine, the time the shortcuts. Feels like a pattern I always hit, and obviously all the time end up losing money. Been scammed last week of $3,000 on crypto. Kind of knowing and feeling it wrong, I still went in out of control. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff there, Dragos. Yeah. First of all, I just want to say shiny object syndrome, super common. Oh yeah, Andrea, thank you. We should really just hire Andrea. She's good at reminding us to do things. Yeah. Quick break from the shiny object. Dragos, I swear we'll get to it. Intuitive Mind weekend this weekend. Intuitive Mind live weekend this weekend. 2-day live event with us. Probably our favorite, experience in certain ways, because it always introduces us to a lot of new people in the community, and so it's like a really intimate, wonderful, juicy 2 days together. Like, I don't know that I'm ever on a higher high than at the end of an Intuitive Mind event, because it's like, it's one thing to, do our coaching programs, which are phenomenal, but we are together for like 2 hours and we're in the middle of our days. And so we take that pause and do the experience, but like taking a whole weekend to be with each other, and really being with you guys for a long period of time is just like, it just adds a whole other layer and element to me. And like, we always walk out of those weekends and we're like, oh my God, can you believe it? Because even for us, the novelty of this work never wears off. Like, watching people transform, incredible, moving every single time, what people share, what the work can do for people. And it just lets us like kind of find out who's been on the fringe that's kind of moving in closer. And, a lot of people who do those programs do end up participating with us for a long period of time, and then end up kind of being like family to us. So it's like a wonderful first date, basically.
It's the best way to jump in and get the full experience of what it is that we do and the methodology and all of it. So if you've been on the sidelines or just wanting to figure out what's next, what it looks like, it's the best place to be.
Yeah. So back to what Dragos was saying. So there's a lot wrapped up in your question. I think greed is a powerful motivator for really bad decisions. And I'm not saying that to make you wrong, because I've done it myself and made horrible financial decisions many times in my life. I can't tell you how many times people have stolen from us, how many partnerships that we paid to be into. The person walked away with the money. And didn't do at all what they said they would do. I'm in that situation right now, and actually fighting it legally as well for that specific reason. So it happens, and greed is what motivated that. Like, I'll just say it even for me. And it feels like I want to take a shortcut to get to this thing that feels like it's going to create more stability for me. And so behind all of that is the fear of not having stability, right? And a desire to get there faster. And it's just like the food thing. It's like when you don't take time to really feel into it and you override it purely based on logic because you think, oh, here's an opportunity, let me take my shot. I have found like 9.9 out of 10 times that comes to bite you in the ass in some pretty shitty ways. And so it really comes down to the same principles. It's like, what's your alignment? And it's okay if that stuff happens because, look, ultimately, it's going to be a great teacher for you, right? In the short term, probably painful. In the long term, probably going to pay off dividends. Historically, when we've had situations like that occur, and there have been many, I always think to myself, this was a cheap lesson that could have been a lot more expensive down the road. So I appreciate that I didn't have to learn that lesson in the tens of millions, but maybe in the tens of thousands instead, because you could learn those lessons in the tens of millions also. And so, sometimes I've been in those situations, and recovery sucks. But look, for those of us, and again, maybe Elon has a different take on this, but for those of us who are like kind of done with the status quo, and we're not employees, we're not manufacturers, we don't want a life where we make $70,000 a year for the next 40 years and not have the experiences that we want to have. There is an element of like risking from time to time to see if you can expand and see what happens with that. I don't know anybody who's created anything worthwhile on this planet that didn't do it with some element of risk involved, So I think that it just kind of comes with it, is that when you're going to take a lot of shots, you're also going to miss a lot of times. And, any great athlete has a record also, generally speaking, has the other record where they've missed more than anybody else, right? Babe Ruth with home runs, and Michael Jordan, I think, missed the most amount of shots, but also made the most amount of shots. Kobe Bryant, right? Like, it's just kind of how it goes. They took the most shots, so they also had the most to lose and the most to win in many situations. And then, what happens when you lose is all that stuff comes up, and that's the opportunity, is to sit in entrainment with that part of your system and let it know that, hey, this is really scary. And that's what there is to realize, Dragos, is that fear is not new. And partly what motivated that decision to make that investment and try to get that quick win was that fear. And so if you can sit with it and become intimate with it instead of trying to get rid of it, I think you'll find yourself in a much healthier place and making better decisions down the road.
Yeah, I was just going to add that it's not about the action that you took, Dragos. It's about the energy behind the action. And you even said in your question that you kind of knew going in that it didn't feel right, but what they provided and what they said and what your mind looked at, it wanted to convince you that it worked. But if you actually listened intuitively to what your body was sensing, then you wouldn't have taken that action. For Guy and I, a lot of it is, always, to the best of our ability, finding alignment, ground, and centeredness before we make any decision.
Now,
because we've learned through tons and tons and tons of, same thing that Dragos did, like that hope of, this thing is going to shorten the curve, or this thing is going to get me that quick result, or whatever it is. I was just talking to the coaches about Ozempic and how everyone's all shooting themselves up because they found the easiest way to lose weight. Meanwhile, there's already studies about how it stops your metabolism. And once you get off of it, you gain all this weight. So now people are basically going to be having to take this for the rest of their lives. And, but it doesn't matter because people are short-sighted and they don't give a shit about the long-term issues. And so we make terrible short-term decisions for our long-term selves. Terrible. If instead we looked at our lives as this kind of like long form thing, what would you do that you invested day in and day out over the next year, 2, 3, 5, 10, that you can create as habits that ongoingly through time are going to give you benefit? And my buddy, who I talked to quite a bit, we were talking about health and recovery and things like that for longevity. And we were talking about cold plunges and this and that. And he's like, the reason I haven't gotten into cold plunges is because I know me, and cold plunge is one of those things that I may do for the next month or 2 or 3, but then I'm going to lose interest and I'm going to stop. So he's like, what I'm interested in is what are the things that I can add that I know I'm going to do for the rest of my life right now. And I was like, wow, that's a really interesting way to look at things, right? And so he chose things that like he knows that he can do, whether it's running, walking, eating a certain way, saunas, hot yoga, like he's chosen his path. And I think that's really smart. Like, what are the things that you can dedicate your practice, energy, and life to that you're going to sustain ongoingly to give you sustained great results without constantly looking for the quick fix shortcut? There's nothing worthwhile. And I'm looking around, not even at just my life. My life is like one barometer, but I can't find a single thing where I look at any professional, any role model, any like whether they're crazy successful in business, sports, authors, this, that, whatever you name it, content creators, there's not a single gimmick to success. Success takes dedication, ongoing, for a very prolonged period of time. And the reason most people are not successful is because they give up when shit gets hard. I was watching a content creator and he was talking about the difference between long form videos and short form videos and like how much money he makes. So he was talking about like one video that he's had up for whatever it was, like 3 years. It was a 15-minute video. And versus another one that he's had up for like 3 months, but it has like 5 million. It was like one of these shorts. And he's like, how much money do you think I made from each? So the 5 million views in 3 months on this short, he made something like $300 on. But the long form video that he's had up for 3 years, that's, got 1 million views, he's made something like $4,000 or $5,000 on. And what he was saying is like, content is one of those things that you just have to keep creating over and over and over and over and over and over and over again in order to have some sort of level of success. So like we see all these people, but the amount of work that it takes to create channels like that people are just constantly viewing is a fuck ton of work.
Yep.
And most of us just don't have it. Like, that's the thing. It's like, I mean, Guy and I talk about it all the time, but like with our busy lives and this and that, like we just don't have the time to be that consistent to make that a reality now.
I thought there was more after the now. I thought you were going to make a turn. That was just now. I see. Yeah, no, I agree. And I've seen over the last year, a lot of very famous YouTube content creators actually quit their channels or put them on pause because of the intensity of having to generate content for their communities is overwhelms them to keep it going.
Yeah.
It happens, right? Like we've always tried to create simple things, maybe not the most attractive things, but we talk about the things that matter to us and what we care about. And I think when it comes down to, content creation, like again, one of those things, everyone's trying to hack it to figure out what's a shortcut to get there. But it's like, if you're not speaking things that you care about, how long are you going to do that for? How long are you really going to continue doing anything? We've been podcasting for like close to a decade. It's never been a thing that's like wildly taken off. And that's okay. We used to do more of the podcast circuit and do a lot of interviews and this and that, but it gets really, really boring really fast when you get on a podcast circuit and everyone asks you the same 3 questions and you have to discuss the same conversation over and over again. And it's very rare you get on a call with somebody who is like really opened and both like spiritually sound and intellectual simultaneously, and can have just a really enthralling conversations. And out of like the hundreds of podcasts that we did back in the day, I can remember maybe 2, maybe 3 moments where we met somebody and we're like, wow, that was a special experience, right? And like you walk out of there and you're like high from that conversation. And those are rarities. And it's the same reason we don't really interview anybody on our podcast either, because we don't want people just hucking books at you and courses at you that are all saying the same thing, but don't really say anything at all.
Yeah.
And it's another person trying to get, their fake New York Times bestseller thing because they propagated it at the perfect time. And it's like, just again, everyone's just trying to hack the system. I mean, what do we get? 10, 20 requests for podcasts a week, something like that. And it's not even like we have a popular podcast, like it's just for the community who wants to learn from us. So, those things happen. And I think that all speaks to what we're talking about here. Patience is the tool that people use when they want to exponentially grow. You keep investing in something over and over and over again, and it pops, just like money, just like technology, right? Just like your health. You may not see it right away, but when you're patient, you compound. You compound. You don't look for the short, quick wins. You look for, okay. And so in a spiritual sense, and then we'll start wrapping up here, energetically, it's the same. You keep coming to your practice. You keep coming to your practice. You keep coming to your practice. Little wins. And then like something happens and you have this realization, moment of clarity. Suddenly realize how to sit in your system differently, be in your awareness differently, feel your system differently. It's hard to name when that happens, but you know it. It's like a bell rings in your head, in your system. You feel it so deeply, and like you're changed by that experience profoundly forever. Now, if you hadn't done the minuscule 5-minute, 10-minute practices every day for 3 months, that wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
And so that's what I feel like. It's like I always say, like spirituality is like tick, 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 quantum leap, tick, 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 quantum leap. And I always think, fuck, these quantum leaps are eventually going to fall out, and I'm going to fall out of love and favor with this work. But then it always surprises me. And this thing happens and I'm like, oh my God. And I'm always like amazed. How did I miss that before? Because it seems so obvious once it happens, but that's as obvious as realizing that you were in a dream and then waking up and then recognizing that you were in that dream. You were in a dream before, and then a moment of realization, we call it awakening. Metaphor, right? Awakening, realizing that you were in some kind of dream state before, and then you're in your next dream state until you awaken from that dream state, and so on and so forth, until we awaken ourselves and we finally realize that this whole thing has been an illusion and a dream, and we really are at the center of it all. So, boom, consciousness.
Come to the live event this weekend. Seriously, if you want to have an actual experience of this work and not just talk about it and think about it, that's the move.
Agreed. Come, and if there's people in your life, don't be weird. Just tell them there's a cool event this weekend. Share with them. Send them the ticket. Say, hey, I think you get a lot of value from this. These two guys know what they're talking about when it comes to transformation and healing, and they're really wonderful events. We always have a few that kind of like sneak in under the wire like that, and they're always like completely blown away by this experience. And we give our all every single time, and it's always fun to know that somebody in our community brought somebody else.
Yeah,
because it feels cherished to us when you guys share this work. So yeah, just wanted to throw that out there. Intuitivemind.live to get your tickets. It's not too late, and we get going Saturday morning. All right, y'all. Thanks for being here.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.